the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. He joins me right now to talk about all of this and whether Jared Kushner's explanations about all those contacts were enough for him. Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. How are you, Brett?
So where do you think this is going, this investigation, and the meetings so far? What are they telling you?
Well, on the congressional side, it's going pretty slowly, but Jared Kushner is an important witness. I'm glad we got him in. We have 2 other witness interviews scheduled for this week. On Bob Mueller's side, I have no idea where it's going or how long it's going to take, and frankly, I should not know where it's going or how long it's going to take.
Here is Jared Kushner from yesterday about being pretty definitive.
I did not collude with Russia, nor do I know of anyone else in the campaign who did so. I had no improper contacts. I have not relied on Russian funds for my businesses. And I have been fully transparent in providing all requested information.
Do you believe that to be true? And did he answer all the questions today behind closed doors?
Yeah, Brett, he answered all of the questions. Even when the Democrats ran out of good questions, he kept answering them. He stayed for 1 hour longer than he was supposed to. In fact, he stayed for 1 hour longer than DNI Dan Coates stayed, who's the head of our intelligence community. You just played a quote where he used the phrase in the campaign. I went back through that quote with him word by word and said, okay, take out part of the campaign. Do you know of anyone, period, who colluded, conspired, or coordinated with Russia during the 2016 presidential primary or general election? The answer is no. I ask him that question every way you can ask a person that question, and the answer was always no.
He was one of the people in this Russia meeting in Trump Tower. If all of this is accurate, where is the investigation to go? Understanding you don't know Special Counsel Mueller's direction where that could end up, but as far as you're looking at it.
Well, there's a universe of witnesses we have to talk to. You just mentioned the June 2016 meeting. Donald Trump Jr. would be someone we wanted to talk to. Paul Manafort would be someone we needed to talk to. Roger Stone. But as it relates to Jared Kushner, who was involved in many different facets of the campaign, I could not have asked him more unequivocally, did you collude, conspire, confederate, coordinate anything with Russia or any other foreign actor? And the answer was no at every different level. Under oath, he was also quizzed by the Democrats for the exact same amount of time. The answer never changed. He was as definitive as you can possibly be in answering that question in the negative.
All right, I want to turn to now what the president has been saying about the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. We just played some sound from that and his tweets, obviously. Your thoughts on this and a president and an Attorney General that obviously doesn't have the confidence of the president?
Well, Brett, it's sad for me on a number of levels. Having worked in the Justice Department, I view that job differently from other government jobs, other cabinet-level jobs. I don't think personnel decisions are usually well resolved over Twitter. I think the president's frustration was not the recusal. I hope it wasn't, because I don't think Attorney General Sessions had a choice but to recuse himself. If the president's going to be frustrated, he should be frustrated by what led up to the recusal, which was Senator Sessions had a faulty memory. I think that's what led him to have to recuse himself. The recusal itself was appropriate. His failure to recall meetings with the Russian ambassador is what led him to that point. And if the president's frustrated about that, I understand his frustration, but you work all that out during the interview process, not after you get the job.
But if you're Attorney General and you're reading and hearing all of this, are you resigning?
Well, you should immediately leave any country where I was the Attorney General. I would not stay if my employer had lost confidence in me. But on the other hand, Attorney General Sessions may believe that he is doing the job the way he is supposed to. He doesn't work for the president. He works for a blindfolded woman holding a set of scales. So he's got to make that call. It's a very difficult circumstance. And again, I view that job differently than I do Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Agriculture. It is heartbreaking to me as a former DOJ employee to see public squabbling between the commander-in-chief and the nation's top law enforcement officer.
Do you think that this will be resolved, all of these investigations, anytime soon?
I hope so. Brett, we are, again, we'll do 3 interviews this week. Part of that depends upon the pace with which the Democrats on the House side act. And based on what I heard this morning, which was cramming 5 minutes of questioning into 3 hours, they benefit from this lasting as long as possible. Those with California Senate ambitions and others benefit from this lasting as long as possible. So at some point, I hope our leaders on our side will say, we're going to march forward with or without you. And again, Bob Mueller, which I think is what most people are waiting on. I hope they're not waiting on Congress to unlock the mysteries of the world. I hope they're waiting on Bob Mueller. I don't have any idea how long that's going to take.
Last thing, put your health care hat on. The Senate moves forward with the motion to proceed. They're now amending the bill. If the Senate finally gets to something that they're going to pass and they go to conference committee, are you confident that you all can get something through?
I am. That's a lot of ifs, and that might be the 7th sign of the apocalypse if all that happened. But yes, I think that we can pass something if the Senate is able to do so.
All right. Mr. Chairman, thanks for the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Impressions then. Another
Yes, sir.
topic. Is Jeff Sessions in trouble?
It doesn't look great. I haven't talked to him about it. The tweets are not helpful for long-term employment, but that's between he and the president.
Yeah. Do you think that someone has screwed up here that would have led to the potential for his perhaps termination or resignation based on what we're trying to read between the lines, essentially?
Well, Bill, I think a couple of things. I think Jeff Sessions made the right decision in recusing himself, and I also understand the president's frustration at the decisions and actions that Attorney General Sessions that led to him having to recuse himself. I mean, that's where my focus is. The president is frustrated that he picked an Attorney General that had to recuse himself. The recusal was based on the Attorney General's failure to recall some meetings. So that's what the recusal was based on. The recusal was appropriate, but I do understand the president's frustration. I wish you had told me this when you were interviewing for the job. Perhaps I would have picked someone else. That's not an unfair thing to muse about.
Would that have been an appropriate conversation at that time?
Sure. Absolutely. Is there any reason you know of that you should not take the job? Are there any limitations on your ability to take the job? All of us who have applied for jobs get asked that question. Is there anything in your background that I should know about? Yes, Mr. President, I met with Russians during the campaign when I was out there trying to help you get elected. These conversations are always better on the front end than afterward. And again, the Attorney General forgot about some of these contacts. So that's what led to the recusal.
Okay.
It's his bad memory.
Sir, thank you for your time, and hope you...
Of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman, welcome. Good to have you here tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So you heard Senator Sessions' recusal today and watched him answer the questions. What questions do you have for him remaining?
For him, probably not any, because I'm not a criminal investigator. So to the extent people are talking about false statements before Congress, I wouldn't have any. That was my old job. My new job is to provide oversight over investigations after they happen, which is why we met with Jim Comey this morning. But, you know, Attorney General Sessions incorrectly answered a question. That happens almost every day in Congress, and there aren't perjury referrals. People do make mistakes. I was struck listening to the intro, Martha, that it could not have been a campaign-related conversation if it took place on Capitol Hill. I don't know where the meeting with the Russian ambassador took place, but if it took place at the Capitol...
I believe it was in his office with 2 of his aides.
Okay, well, then you can't discuss politics, presidential or otherwise. That is yet a separate issue. So the Jeff Sessions I know has always been a rule follower. I don't think he's going to be talking about campaign-related matters on Capitol grounds. And if he said he forgot about it, he would be about the 1 millionth person who actually forgot about a fact.
But here's why I think you know, the whole thing is raising questions. And after I watched the news conference today, some of those questions arose. You know, it's the middle of the campaign. It's September. There's already all this discussion about hacking from Russia that surfaced during the DNC in the summer. So he says that the Russian ambassador called out of the blue and said, you know, I'd like to come in and talk with you. And he said yes. So just a few short months later in January, he describes a somewhat uncomfortable conversation. And he said he brought up things about the Ukraine that, you know, seemed to make the ambassador a little uncomfortable with his take on that idea. And then in January, he doesn't remember that conversation happening. And then after that, his aides don't say to him, you know, hey, after the testimony, we did have that meeting, remember? And there's no follow-up to the committee based on that recollection?
Well, it's up to him. He's the one that gave the testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's up to him to clarify it. I'm just telling you, having been there for 6 years, almost every witness gets some fact incorrect. That is not tantamount to perjury. I'm not prejudging this. The FBI is welcome to look at it. If the Senate feels that strongly about it, they can send a referral to the FBI. But simply making a factual error is not tantamount to perjury. All
right. So the investigation is ongoing. You met with the FBI director this morning. I watched Congressman Schiff come out and speak about that earlier today. He said that, you know, the FBI has only given us a fraction of what they know here. He seemed very rattled that they're not sharing enough about whether or not there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. That is the main question. What's your takeaway? What are you able to share about that?
I was in the same room for the same morning, and it is exactly the opposite. I have never heard a federal law enforcement agent give with that degree of particularity and detail an update on an inquiry. And as you may recall, I was a federal prosecutor for 6 years, so I have talked to lots of FBI agents. He went so far beyond what any other administration official has ever done, whether it's Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, or his predecessor, Robert Mueller. They never gave us this level of detail and specificity. He bent over backwards, not just the DNC. Martha, I want to investigate all aspects of Russia, not just Podesta's email, everything. Hacking our infrastructure, attempts to hack the RNC, whatever they did, look at it. But Congress does not run parallel criminal investigations with the FBI. We're not equipped to do it. We're not supposed to do it. Jim Comey did more today to update us than I have ever had done in the 6 years I have been there. And for Adam to treat it that way, that dismissively, clearly he and I were in two separate rooms this morning.
Very interesting. Just last question. John Brennan and Mr. Clapper both said that after the investigation, they were not able to see any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, that they were trying to bring down Hillary Clinton's candidacy. Is there any new information that you got from Mr. Comey on that today?
Well, if I did get new information, despite how adeptly you asked that question, I would not be able to share it given the nature of our hearing. But I will tell you this, to the extent people are relying on media reports, whether it's the New York Times or the Washington Post, upon which to base their factual assertions, I would tell them to be very, very careful. I'm not going to say any more than that, other than the person leading the investigation on behalf of the United States government, the head of the FBI, listen to what he has to say. Don't listen to anonymous sources who leak classified information, which, oh, by the way, is also against the law. Between Jim Comey and a reporter from the New York Times, give me Jim Comey.
Thank you very much, Congressman.